Hello there guys, welcome to the video on Cornerstone. So this is Mystic Games. It's a pleasure to be here with you. We're going to discuss pretty much all the cornerstones that I have unlocked. I don't have them all, but this is more for beginners anyways. I'm going to rate them on a scale 1 to 5, 5 being very good, 1 being bad. So for advanced herbalism, I'd put this at a 4. I don't think you can even get this unless you have the herb garden unlocked. Herb garden out of all the fertile soil buildings is one of my favorites because it can kind of do everything. So I'd rate this at a 4 generally. It also will depend on the map. If you have a map that has average fertile soil, it's a 4. If you have a map that's small on the amount of fertile soil, it's probably like a 3 or a 2. Ancient Pact, this is very good. But if you just start popping open too many glades, which you shouldn't be doing if you have this, because this should help guide you where you need to go, it's bad. But if you know what you're doing, this is a pretty good one. I would say this is a 4 or a 5. It really depends on your situation and your needs. Back to Nature increases the yield of all fertile soil building, so it's essentially a better version of advanced herbalism, but you destroy all your food when you pick this. So late game, this is probably going to be bad for you unless you're really hurting for some odd reason with food anyways. In early game, it could be okay, but you have to remember you need food. So if you don't have access to a good food source, this can like destroy your run if not used properly and with good timing. I would argue sooner than later. So that's probably like, that one's very situational. I'm not even going to give that a rating. I would never pick that one almost ever if I have. I'd rather go with something that doesn't have a negative. This is the same idea. This is for blight rot, so most people here won't even have the need to know what this is if you're a beginner. But this has a negative on top of it. I wouldn't pick it. I would say that's like a 1 or a 2, the baptism. Bed and breakfast is pretty good. Every time a trader arrives, you get 10 money. I would give this like a 3. If you have a lot of farms going, farmer's diet with biscuits, and you have humans, this is fantastic. I would rate this like a 4 or a 5. This is very situational though. A shady but lucrative deal, gain 10 amber every time a villager dies. This pairs well with Ancient Pact. So if you have Ancient Pact where every time you discover a glade somebody dies, this gives you 10 money back for the death. Super good. If you do not have Ancient Pact, my hope is that you're not dying or your villagers aren't leaving consistently enough, because you're probably losing, and that makes this bad. So good in combination, but bad by itself. We'll give it a solid 2 or 3. Bakery production, 50% quicker. Not amazing. I would give this a 2. Calming the forest, if you go for an harmony event, if you go with an empathy event, right? There's different events when you click on the glade tasks, and you'll have like loyalty, empathy is one of them. I think corruption's another one. This requires a very specific need, and therefore I would give this a 3. Cannibalism, this is probably a 1 or a 2, but if you have Ancient Pact, this is probably like a 4 or a 5. Cheap construction, unless you get this super early in the game, not that great. And even on top of that, it has a negative. It reduces your resource nodes, and in certain maps you kind of need your resource nodes, so this can be very detrimental. Clay delivery line, if you're in a map that does not have access to stone, this is probably a 4 or 5. If it's in a map that you do have clay, that's still fine. I would give it like a 3 though. Maybe a 4. It depends on your other options, but it isn't one of my higher choices. It's just a positive. Cooking steam, this one's good. It's every 50 units of drizzle water. It increases food production speed. So this works for everything, unlike the bread peels, which is 50% in the bakery. This is 10% for all buildings. The issue is you need drizzle water storage. So if you have a bunch of drizzle water and this comes up, not a bad thing to get, because if you get 20% on all your buildings, that's pretty good. So I would give this like a 4 or 5. It's a net positive in general. Like, you don't get a negative out of it. Crowded caravans early in the game, or if you're just losing all your villagers for some odd reason, like you have Ancient Pact for per se again, this is very good. I would say this is a 4 or 5. Mid game, probably like a 2 or a 3. Late game, probably a 1. Generally, you don't want to be getting a ton of villagers later because it just causes food issues. Crowded houses. All houses have one more villager. I would give this a 4 or a 5. In particular, early game, this is really good too, because every time you build a house, it's going to allow additional villager to be there. Deserted caravans. I would give this a 3. It increases your speed in buildings, but it reduces trader arrival, and traders are very important. You can get a lot of good things from traders. Driving water. Wood cutting speed increased by 10% for 150 units of water used in range engines. This is permanent, so if you get an early geyser up and going and you get a building pumping in rainwater, very good for your wood cutting speed. It's insane. The issue is, this is probably a mid-game choice. I wish this was retroactive too, but I would say mid-game choice, not early game. Dye extractor, I would give this a 1 or a 2. This is situational, and pigment isn't that great. So unless you have just a mass amount of insects going on, that's all you have for food sources, this would be better. But otherwise, just not that fantastic. Newcomers arrive 15% quicker, bring 10% more goods for every standing you have at a trade settlement. This is pretty good. I would argue, is this better than crowded caravans? I suppose this is actually probably better than crowded caravans. So I'll give this a 4. This just gives you free reeds and free clay. I would give this a 3 or a 4. This is probably like a 2. It boosts your resolve every time you open a new glade, but it reduces your wood cutting for until you open 2 glades. Generally, if anything has a negative, I'm very, very wary of it, because it just slows down your progress and can cause issues in your game. Export specialization. This is, again, probably a 4 or a 5. It's just a net positive. This is pretty good. Every time you get a reputation point through high resolve, you get 40 water skins. If you don't have access to any type of container, this is good. I would give this a 3 though. Farming tools, this is a 4 or a 5. If you don't have a lot of fertile soil, probably like a 2 or a 3. Scouting ahead, discovering a small glade increases the working speed of scouts. This one, I just feel like there's so many better choices that I would never pick this. But we'll say, I'll probably give that a 2. This is, again, probably like a 3 through a 5. It depends on your situation, if you have access to plant fibers, whatnot. Resources you sacrifice in the Ancient Hearth burn 5% longer for every impatience point. Not a big sacrifice, or unless I absolutely have to. This is very situational, guys. I'm going to say this is like a 2 or 3, because this is a situational one. It's not just a net positive. Increases porridge production by 1 for every 150 units. This is like a 1. Unless everybody eats porridge in your civilization, I would not value this highly. Flame amulets. Hostility for woodcutters is decreased by 4. I thought it was 6. I think it goes by difficulty that you're playing on. Flame amulets is pretty good. This is just a hostility decrease for your woodcutters. I usually run 6 woodcutters pretty much at all times, so this for me is normally a choice that I rate pretty high. This is like a 4 or 5 for me. This is 1 because impatience growing, I like it. Every time I have slow impatience growth, I tend to just lose my game, or I have a really hard time. Boost global resolve for 3 levels of reputation with the trade routes. I wish this was a 2. If this was a 2, I'd rate this at like a 5. But because it's a 3, I'm going to give it a 4. Every time you complete 2 glades, you get 2 wildfires. So pretty much every, 1 glade event is 1 wildfire is what it equals. This is pretty good, because wildfire is hard to come by. The issue is, how much wildfire do you really need? I would give it a 3. It's a good choice, but it's just it depends really if you need wildfire. Ancient farming technique, fungal guide. This is one of my favorite bonuses. I'm gonna give it a 3 though. If you have a herb garden and you get there's a cornerstone that I really like. If I can manage to pull it, I would say take this as a 5, and we'll talk about that later. Wealthy settlements, they bring 40% more goods for every hearth level gained. This is good. This is like a 3 in the beginning of the game. In late game, this is like a 4 or a 5. Vegetables, if you have access to I want to say small farm, super good. I'll give it a 5 if you have the small farm. If you don't have the small farm, probably like a 2. You got to look on your map to see if you have access to vegetables, and then that's how you kind of make your decision. Sea Marrow for 2 amber. So, there are maps where this is amazing. Seal maps tend to have Sea Marrow as a choice, and because you don't want to be cutting down trees like insane because you'll get a lot of hostility, this is another way to make Sea Marrows more valuable. I really argue that this is very strong in seal maps. In other maps where you're not worried about hostility from the tree cutting, it's probably like a 2. But in like the seal map, I would say a 4 or a 5. This is the same thing. So grain production for 1 for every 25 times. This is good if you have the small farm, because eventually you will get this. I would actually argue getting the upgrade for the 50% on the small farm first. If you have, obviously you have to, see how it rolls down. I would get that first if you could, then get the grain bags. We'll give the grain bags a 3 through a 5. Grain delivery line is a 3 through a 5. Traders will have 1 more blueprint for sale. This is very nice in the beginning of the game because it just guarantees you another slot for buying blueprints from the trader or perks, and therefore it makes them more versatile. And I would rate this pretty high. I would say this is probably a 3 through a 5 as well. Hauling carts. Okay, so this is going to be a take because I feel like people I talk to about hauling in general do not like them. Hauling carts, the way I play, and again, this may not be optimal. I build warehouses near my food. So generally if I have a farm or a fertile soil building, I will build a small warehouse like right next to it to increase the time that it takes them to like just drop off the food when they do get full. And if you have hauling carts, they will just grab supplies. Later game, they become less useful because it depends on how many warehouses you constructed. But I've had games where I have like 3 or 4 warehouses, and I just have carts going around just dropping goods off, and it makes everything just way quicker. So I'm going to give this I would say 4 early game, and then later game probably a 3. For every 2 Glade events, you get 1 Ancient Tablet. This is really good. I would give this like a 5. This is almost probably a 5 in many ways. I don't think this ever really decreases. If you don't have access to fertile soil at all, this is good. If you have access to fertile soil, not good. Trying to think. So in a map like I'm in right now, the issue is I have fertile soil. I can literally see it on my upper left. Like, if I didn't know that was there, and I wasn't going to have quick access to it, I would probably pick this. But because I know I have access to it, I would say this is bad. So that's a situational one. I don't want to give that a rating. It's going to depend on your map and what you're finding. This is, again, 50% amount produced. This is a 3 through a 5. The issue with this one is I would argue that the plantation, the small farm, and the herb garden are just better choices than this one. Which again comes to this one. This is a 3 or a 5 as well. This one gains the most overall goods when you get the upgrade because it goes 6-6, it goes from 6-6 to 9-9, whereas the other ones go through 3-6 to like 5-9. Reed production. This is good if you have access to reeds. I would argue reeds are one of the more rare resources though. So I'd probably give this like a 2 through a 4 compared to the other ones. Okay, so leftover crops. If you have the herb garden, 5. Especially if you have upgrades on the herb garden, because you'll pretty much get 2 packs every time you do it. You don't even need to worry about pack provisions anymore. If you don't have the herb garden, it's probably like a 2 or a 3. 12 amber for every ale. I would give this a 3 through a 4. There's no negative to it, but you need to be producing ale. This one is good early game. I'd give it like a 4. Late game, I'd give it a 2. It's because I normally don't value villagers later as highly as I do in the beginning. An unusual amount of supplies can be found in some glades. Gain 40 meat and 40 grain. This is not bad. I would say this is like a 3 because it requires dangerous or forbidden glade events, though. Lumber tax. This is just a solid choice, especially early game because you're just hacking trees down, and you'll get a lot of value out of it over time. It's just there are better ways, I would say, to gain amber overall. I would give it like a 3 though. If there's not a better choice, it's not a bad choice. Okay, so this one I don't like. You need to complete 5 trade routes. The negative on this one I feel like is so... I'd give this like a 2. It's really good if you can fulfill the needs for it quickly, but I just don't ever feel like this is the option because the negative is so hard. If it was like 3 trade routes and I could just do it in one sitting, I would probably take this every time, but because it's 5, I can't, and it just bothers me knowing I have to wait for the trader. This unlocks all your camps, like, better versions. And the negative on here, this is a 1. And some people are probably going to get mad that I said that. This is like a 1 because the advanced versions are great, but it's going to decrease your speed by half. And then it requires 300 resource nodes, man. Like, I don't know what the developers were thinking here. Maybe 100? Because you already get such a reduction. Like, it has to be 100, man. I honestly wouldn't even put the negative. Or if I did, I'd make it like a 20% decrease. And then do like 100, man. Anyways, that's my thoughts on that one. Meat production in a map like I'm on right now, super good. I would say this is like a 4 or a 5. On a map where I have access to fertile fields, like a 2 or a 3. Increases production speed of copper bars, crystallized dew, and all. Okay, so this is like a 2 for me. I don't tend to make copper bars, crystallized dew, or metal ingots at all. I tend to buy them, and I use my other means of making money to do so. This one's not bad. I would actually argue this one's probably better than the Ancient Pact. Because you don't lose villagers, you just gain impatience when you pop open glades. And impatience isn't hard to deal with. It's actually very good to have a high amount of impatience, I feel like, early on. And then when you're trying to start to win, you just kind of start popping a few orders to get the build. I mean, you gotta hope on RNG's luck, though, that you get the buildings you need. So we're gonna say a 4. I would argue this is a 4. Gain mushrooms for 3 grain if you have the small farm. Very good, 4 or 5. And if you have access to fertile fields. If not, it's probably like a 2. Vegetables can now be produced in the greenhouse. I don't even think I have access to the greenhouse yet, but I can see this being pretty good. This is one of my favorite cornerstones. All farms can plant mushrooms. Mushrooms are used in so much stuff. They are extremely strong. Normally, if I like to get this combination with the herb garden, and then I just stop making roots most of the time, and I just make mushrooms and herbs, and it's insane. I would give this like a 5, unless you don't have fertile soil. This is a 5 or a 4. This is good. It just reduces corruption when you start playing on higher difficulties. This is a net positive. I would argue this is like a 4 or a 5. This one's a net positive. It's just 3 barrels every time you do 10 planks. This is a 4 or a 5. It's just a positive. Every new villager you get 3 packs of provisions. This is like a 3. Okay, so if you have more hearths going, this is better. This could be really good. This could be like almost broken if depending on the hearths you have, but I would say this is like a 4, maybe a 3. It's going to be a lower like score in the beginning, and then as the game progresses and you start getting more hearths up, it's going to be better. I normally recommend at least 2 hearths in most maps, maybe 3, depending how long it's taking and how spread out you are. This one's really good. So hostility is reduced by 10 points every time you sell amber. If you're in a good place and you're getting a lot of packed provisions, you're just getting a lot of trades, you can pretty much stack hostility reduction and cancel out like a year's worth of stuff within a couple seasons. So I would actually argue this is one of the stronger ones. This has to be a 4 or a 5. It's probably not best to take in the early game though. This is like a 2. I'm not even reading what that is because that's how good it is. Gain 1 glow or resolve for 2 impatience points. This isn't horrible. I would give this a 3. I would probably never take it unless there was no better option. Wood cutting is a lot easier. Wood camps. I give this like a 4. I do like the wood cutting speed. Getting the 35% is pretty good. Rich glades. This is like a 4 or 5. 4 or 5. If you don't have fertile soil, this is a very good choice. This is like a 5 or a 4. If you have fertile soil, this is like probably a 1. Safe havens, this is one of my favorite hostility reductions because it's very easy to accomplish, and it will give you pretty much, usually it gives me a net of 80 hostility reduction very quickly. So I would give this like a 4. This is probably a 5. So this is one of the cookbook ones. If you have somebody that eats pies and then you have another person that eats jerky, you're essentially just getting free jerky here. So this is like a 4 or a 5. It depends on your needs of your species, though. This is horrible to me. Every Forbidden Glade discovered lowers hostility gain from, like, this is an overall bonus, and I get that, but you're probably only going to pop open 1 Forbidden Glade, and if maybe 2. Like, I just don't foresee you popping open more than 1 or 2 Forbidden Glades. So then that amount that you're gaining just isn't strong enough, in my opinion, to be worth it. Someone can tell me I'm wrong about that, though. Newcomers arrive quicker. This is just not necessary, but I'll give it a 3. There's no negative to it. If you have the herb garden, this is like a 4 or a 5. If you don't have the herb garden, you gotta look around on what your map has, and that's gonna tell you what you need. Whenever you pop open a cache, it lowers your hostility. So this is pretty good. I would give this like a solid 3. If you're making a ton of flour, this is great. This is like a 4 or a 5. If you're not making flour, again, you have to look at your needs. This is a 5. This just gives you 1 blueprint of your choice out of all the blueprints, so you can pick whatever you want. Very strong. This is very strong, again, if you have the herb garden. I'd say a 4 or 5. If you don't have the herb garden, this is like a 1. Stone can be produced in the clay pits. That's probably like a 3 or a 4. This is like probably a 4 or a 5 most of the time. All trade routes are 40% faster. That's like a 3 or a 4. Depends how bad you want your trade routes to be coming. If you have lizards, gain 1 lizards every 25 eggs. If you have access to a lot of eggs and you have lizards, fantastic. Survivor's Bond. This is like a 4 or 5. This is just net positives. If you have access to leather, this is very good. I would say this is a 4 or 5. If you don't have access to leather, it's probably like a 1 or a 2. A lot of these ratings, guys, are going to be based on if you have access to the resource. On your left, you can see what I have access to, conditions on my map. So just look at that as I'm reading all this. Okay, that's a 1 for me. I don't like to play that way. Detailed notes on different traders and their wares. Gain 1 additional trade route. I like trade logs. Okay, so this is probably like a 4 or 5 for me. It gives you a little bit quicker, but it also gives you access to 1 additional active trade route, which I think is really strong. Lizards gain 1 resolve for every 70 training gear. That's okay. I mean, it works with what you're doing. But again, this one's very situational. I'd just say this is a 3 or a 4, though. With provisions, hollers... Okay, so this increases your hollers. Hollers. Man, I can't say the word. I would give this a 3. This is the every 10 trade routes, you get 1 more room in your house. I just like to get the 1+ in my house, because this can actually make it hard to spread out your hearths and control how your hearths grow. So I would give this a, like, 2. It is good, it's just, it makes it hard to, you know, separate your hearths. Packs of trade goods are worth 20% more when selling them pretty much directly. I don't like this, because pack of trade goods are generally decently difficult to make. And you actually have to get the trader to want to get them through your trade routes. And if you don't have them through your trade routes, you gotta sell them to the trader. So this is like a 3. This is the one for the beavers. It's kind of like the training tools for the lizards. I'd give it like a 3 or a 4. This is with leisure needed. I would actually say this is like a 1. This is kind of a trick, because you would think this is really good, but it isn't as good as you think it is. This one's bad. It disables your consumption control, which is horrible, and just what it gives you is just not high enough. Woodcutter's Prayer. Lose all your stored fuel, but gain 1 to wood production. So, if you get this in the beginning of the game, and this is like your first, or I shouldn't say your first, but like your second choice, super good. If not, not that great. For every felled tree, 20 felled trees, you get 3 global resolve. This is like pretty much a consistent buff of global resolve, but I don't value it that high. I would say this is a 3. Every time you cut down insects during the storm, cut down trees during the storm, you get 2 insects. This is pretty good, as long as you have full working force on trees during the storm. I give this one a solid 3. Every villager with their need for education fulfilled. I mean, that stacks. I would say this is a 4. And then this is the same idea. If you make pickled goods, you're going to get 10 skewers. If you have something that eats pickled goods, and then eats skewers, similar like the lizard, super good. So that's where my list ends, because I haven't unlocked the rest. But that's my thoughts on the cornerstones, guys. Generally, you have to really look at the map you're playing on and what you have and what your needs are. Things can be very situational, as I said, so you got to look into all that stuff. Anyways, I appreciate you guys joining me for the video. If you've if you made it this far, like and subscribe, please. I have a playlist for you guys if you're interested in more information about this game, and more coming up soon. Probably buildings next. All right, later, guys.